Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Contour Community Meeting. Today is July 6th, 2021. Fantastic start of the second half of the year here. We're going to start up with some status updates, and then we have some discussion topics. The first status update is about the 1.17 release.
Yes, I guess this one's on me. I am handling the 1.17 release. We delayed it by a week because we were just we wanted to get some stuff for the Gateway API in, and that has now merged. So later on today, my time, I will be cutting the 1.17 release. So yeah, there's a few things in there. I have actually I've drafted up the release notes and stuff. Yeah, most of it is we've added some Gateway API features and then some other sort of bug fix things. Right now, we're mainly focused on fixing up Gateway API support and getting it working, and sort of bringing along some bugs that people have raised and things like that. So it's not a huge release, but yeah, it should be out today. And that includes, as always, a release for the operator, since they release in lockstep at the same time. Yeah, so that's sort of the headline. There's a bunch of detail in there, obviously, that I could get into, but I think it's probably better to spend our time on the other discussion topics. So
any questions, comments around the release? All right. Then let's dive into some discussion topics. Gary, you have the first one.
Hey, great, thanks. So I'm taking on the getting started guide and the contributing guide, and I read the doc assessment. I think Celeste, you had authored that one, so thank you for being online. It's very timely. So my questions about the getting started guide. I've gone through some of the information, trying to get a better understanding of what the process is to get Contour running. So I was able to, install Docker, use Kind to set up the environment, install Contour, install the, I think it's called QRD application. So I was able to get everything up and running. And so that was really great. I haven't done this in a really long time, so it's nice to get my hands back in there. So my question about the getting started guide, there are three options that are presented. There's the what's called the quick start, there's the Contour operator, and there's Helm. And my question is, if you consider a quick start, are there really three options, or are we presenting one quick start, and then next steps would be Contour operator, and follow-up next steps would be Helm? Like I don't understand the differences between the three. I think it seems the quick start is more you're deploying a service, and then the operator is another level on a different way of setting up your environment. And I haven't really looked at the Helm. So my first question was just about if we were to look at organizing the getting started page, would you look at the quick start as your basic setup, and then look at your Contour operator as next step, and then Helm as next step? I guess that's my first question.
So I think traditionally we've used the quick start as like literally a quick start, like it's there solely so that you can kubectl apply a single thing and get Contour running. But it's not intended to be, like, it's not created to be useful for if you really want to run Contour in a production cluster or something like that, and that you want to be able to customize bits of it or something like that. You get, for the quick start, you get what you get, and as my kids would say, you get what you get and you don't get upset, right? Like, that's it, that's all you get. Whereas if you want to be able to customize the install, you can do that using the operator or the Helm chart right now, and those are sort of the easier ways to do it. Okay. So I guess that's the sort of the distinction in my mind.
Right. So quick start would be just concept, just so you understand how it works. Okay, yeah, perfect.
So then, for people who are looking to kick the tires or do a pop.
Yeah. Okay.
In this context, the quick start is, it's not even looking to understand the concept. It's just get it up and running, and that's literally all it does.
Okay.
And just to kind of touch on the point you had in the note around like the idea of like a happy path doc, typically what happens for most cloud native projects is it's pretty easy to get something up and running somewhat quickly. But when you're actually configuring something like Contour for a production environment, it's a lot more complex. And so that's kind of what the distinction is that getting started is like, get it up and running to make sure your computer doesn't catch fire in the process. And then a happy path, or like understanding what you might actually need to do something in production, is an entirely different can of worms.
Okay. Yeah. So I think someone else was doing the happy path document. So there might be some intersection here between what I'm going to construct and then linking somehow to the happy path document. Okay. So if I looked at it, kick the tires with the quick start, and then a Contour operator procedure, how to set it up, and then the Helm procedure to set it up. I'll kind of look at it that way in terms of a getting started guide. And then of course, links to deployment options and different configurations and all the other documentation. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, 100%. That's and so that's kind of, I 100% acknowledge that the current Kickstarter is not very clear, but that's kind of what it's aiming for right now, is to say, hey, you've really got 3 ways that you can get this thing into your cluster, and then once you've got this thing into your cluster, here's what you can do to verify that it's doing what we say it does, right? And that's the getting started guide is intended to be, I have no idea who these people are, what this thing does, right? Like this is like, blat this thing into a cluster somewhere so that you can check it out. And then here's some tests that you can do that will verify that it does what it says it does. And then probably what you want to say is like, okay, now you've checked this out, probably you want to go over to the happy path document to be like, here's your considerations for when you're actually planning on how to get this working in your cluster for reals.
Okay, perfect. Then I will build a document that would have helped me try to get this up and running, because I had to go to like a bunch of different places.
That's exactly what we're looking for. Yep. I
Okay.
am way too invested in this thing to be able to write a thing like that.
Okay, perfect. My other question was about the contributing guide. There already exists a page. It's off of the document page. At the very bottom on the left side, there's a link to a contributing page. That's separate from the community page. So I can update the contributing page and then provide a link on the community page to that other guide. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Okay.
Sounds
So then
good.
I'll take that contributing guide page. Celeste already provided some kind of a structure. So I'll flesh that out. And there's actually a lot of material that already exists on the website. So I can just refer back to like the philosophy page and some other documents. And then do things like the meetings, the times and the dates and times, things like that, do they ever shift? Because there's a couple different places where meetings are referenced. So I don't want to duplicate information, and just in case something changes, now you've got to think about a couple different places to update.
Yeah, I know we have it in a few places. If we can get that into one spot and then just always link to that, that would be fantastic.
Okay, so I'll look for wherever the meetings are noted and see if we can amalgamate everything.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Okay, that's enough for me for right now. That I thank you very much.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Gary. I would say the last thing I would suggest is when you're actually raising PRs to make the changes, try and keep it's much easier to review if you keep the changes constrained as far as you can, or if you can't because you're re-architecting a whole bunch of things. One of the other things that can make it easier to review is if you keep them in keep sort of slabs of change in separate commits and have because in the GitHub UI you can go through separate commits reasonably easily, and that's a good way to sort of bucket up your changes to be like, well, first I'm going to change this page and I'll put all that in one commit. And then the next I'm going to change this page and I'll put all that in one commit. I'm going to add this page, put all that in one commit. And that just means that when you're reviewing it, it's not like you don't end up with 4,000 lines of PRs to review. You can sort of break it down and it's much easier to review if you do have little chunks.
Okay.
That's actually a good thing that I've tried to say a little bit in some of the contributing resources, but it's pretty hard to say. So if you have any way that you want to make what I just said in the documentation somehow, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Gary. All right. Sanjay, I know you wanted to talk about this a couple of weeks ago, issue triaging. Is that something you still want to bring up?
Yeah, so we had planned when we expanded the time for this meeting that we were going to start doing issue triage in this community meeting. So we actually probably need to talk about first, before we do it, how we're going to do it, because we haven't done it yet. So
yes.
We have the Contour project board, which has a bunch of.
You want to share the screen or something, Sanjay?
I just wanted to ask before we get into that, because we're probably going to end up sort of rolling from discussing how we will triage into actually triaging. Before we get into that, because there's a good chance that will take the rest of the time. Does anyone else have anything they want to talk about before we get started on that? Because that could very easily take far more than the 45 minutes we have left in the meeting.
I had a couple clarification questions, and it's good that Gary's here because I'm working on the other contribution doc, the website contribution doc.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering what sort of expectations you have for website contributions. Are you thinking of docs or blogs and maybe translations, or are you expecting people to edit the style? Like, what types of contributions do you expect people to make?
The contributions will mostly be docs, and then blogs. We definitely want to see more blogs. So docs and blogs, and then minor changes to the UI, essentially the website as a whole. We have another Tech Docs volunteer or Tech Docs working group member who is running an accessibility assessment as well to see what can be fixed there. So they will most likely do a bunch of style changes as well. So, but I don't think those will happen as often. So it will most likely be docs and blogs and then minor CSS changes.
Okay, great. I also had some other clarification questions. There seems to be like many different types of contribution docs, like Gary mentioned. We have like a side thing on the website. We have the website contribution doc, the general contribution doc. And I was wondering if there's any plan to consolidate them into one larger page. Okay, I see you're praying. So, okay.
So there's not currently a plan to do so. However, if you're interested in creating a plan to do so, then Godspeed. Yeah, like basically, like yes. We have kind of left a bunch of this work up to people who know what they're doing more than people who are mainly about writing the software and not so good at writing the documentation to define. So if you want to do that, then please feel free. Otherwise, if you would like us to come up with a plan, then I'm happy to do that too.
I think it would be a good idea because I've been hopping between like 5 different pages trying to figure out what's going on. So Monday in the future, maybe, once Gary and I kind of figure out what we're doing.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
In open source, the work that gets done is the work that somebody has a plan and decides they want to do, and everybody thinks it's a good idea. So if you think it's a good idea and you think you want to come up with a plan, I don't think they'll stop you.
Yeah. Look, so I think the thing about our website is it is a poster child for, to put it nicely, organic growth. If you anything anybody wants to do to help us consolidate it and make it easier to read and easier to understand, like and I'm pretty sure the rest of the team are going to, I'll be 100% behind you, right? Like, we have been pushing things in there to be like, well, we got to document this somewhere. Like, I guess we'll just put it there, but we haven't really had, until Celeste did a review for us, we hadn't really had anybody think about the overall information architecture of the docs or anything like that, right? And so, any feedback you can give us, any plans you can come up with, anything that you can do is 1,000% welcomed. And I am extremely excited to hear what you all have to say. So yes, please knock yourself out.
Keep that in mind. Thank you.
I think that also ties in with another recommendation from Celeste's assessment, which was to reorganize content into a better flow. So if you see things like that, like this, where you have to jump between different documents and they don't tie together or they're not interconnected properly, absolutely flag that and make some changes.
So, and you should also feel 100% free for that sort of thing. Raise an issue, and you don't need to be an org member to raise an issue, but to be honest, like, I'll go and add you two as org members immediately after this, because it's not like we're trying to gatekeep org members. It's more just you need to we just actually want people to show that they're interested before they become an org member. But once you're an org member, you can label issues yourself as well. So once you're an org member, feel free to create an issue and label it as area documentation and doc impact, and then when you're ready, you can assign yourself to that issue and off you go.
Great, thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Derek. And thank you, Nick, for making sure that we captured more questions before we dive into issue triage. Is there any other, do we have any other discussion topics before we dive into this? All right.
Cool. So I think so Sanjay, you were sort of mentioning about we have a board. I will, let me see if I'm pull up the board.
I think we need to have like a list of candidate issues to talk about for each of these triages, because the board is huge.
The board is huge. So what I wanted to do was just to show everybody the board, just to show that it's huge. So yeah, this is the board. It's pretty huge. We've got a lot of stuff on there. Right now, I think the critical things for people to notice are we have columns for individual releases. The 117 release is due to be cut today. Like I said, this is the stuff that is in there. The 118 release is for stuff that we anticipate hitting for the 118 release, and the 119 release is the same. We're still sort of figuring out what the right thing to do is about how we handle these other columns for issue triage. But I just wanted to show that, yes, there is a board. I certainly look at it pretty regularly. Alex looks at it pretty regularly, but I think we haven't talked about it enough in the past or done issue triage. And so, sort of overall community awareness of this is pretty poor. So that's one of the things we wanted to achieve by doing issue triage here is to actually have a chance to work through some of these things with people. So I think, so Sanjay, the answer to say what I think the answer to your question should be is, I feel like the way that we should do this is we have a standing item on the agenda for issue triage. We say, if you want to talk about your issue, then please put a note, put a link to it in the agenda ahead of time. If not, then we will go into the prioritize backlog / parking lot 1 and start looking at issues that don't have and talking about where they're at and pulling issues up to the top or whatever, just sort of working our way through some issues and talking about them so that everyone can get some context on why things are the way they are. Does that sound reasonable, Sanjay?
Yeah, so say again, so we're gonna grab issues from people who want to talk about them and then go through the board.
To
so
start
I
with,
guess,
just so we've
yeah,
got
to
something.
start with. Yeah, I was thinking what I would like the organizational structure of the board to look like in like an ideal final scenario, you know, like obviously like what I was thinking, like as someone routinely picking up issues, right? I want to be able to kind of so anything new that comes in, whether that's out, like I don't know if we need to wait for the community meeting to pull it into a backlog or not, or we can pull it in if it's important, but have somewhere where we can pull in stuff like that, but also have kind of like practice of maybe doing a little bit more work up front when a new issue that at the very least that we originate comes into the project, that we do a little bit more work up front. Like if it's a self-contained chunk, like put enough detail in that it can be worked on. But also if it's not a self-contained one thing, like maybe have a little bit different labeling and whatnot, practices about saying, okay, this is the top level thing, and I'm going to create a bunch of subtasks and whatnot, which we kind of do already. But I guess being able to have a flow between of like things in a in the kind of like directional, like we're gonna burn down these things in the backlog. So I would almost suggest starting a totally new empty board and putting things into it and then organically growing it from there, just because I mean the structure of the like what's in the current release, like we could carry that over, but we were talking about like how we want to organize the project board before, like Kanban, whatever, or sprints, or keep the current columns and stuff. I would, in my ideal Galaxy Brain final state, have like everything pushed to the left, because scrolling to the right is kind of weird. That's minor gripe, but everything pushed to the left. That's kind of like the intake column, and then your next column is like what's completed, you know, like kind of what we have today with the automation. It pulls things over into the completed column, and then that column can be archived or whatever, or for a certain release, like that's what you finish, you block off that column, it's easy to look at, etc. I don't know. And then new community issues like that we're actually going to work on will be pulled into that main column, and like new issues that we create that we want to work on immediately get pulled into that first main column, and then we just burn that column down as we go. That's my like whatever idea for how we would maybe do it if we were starting from scratch, but we have
So
a
the
lot of
first-
issues to start with.
Yeah. So the first column is kind of like up next / in progress. Like it shouldn't be in there unless someone's actively working on it, or is going to work on it.
Yeah,
very
and things don't go onto the board, like because you can have issues that don't get added to the board
right.
until you actually physically add them, I think.
Yeah, they're not added by default.
Yeah, so an issue only gets added to the board if it's actually being
scheduled for being worked on.
yeah, so triaged, and or someone has already decided, oh, this is a bad problem, or this is something I need to do now, and it's going on the board. And then you work on it, finish it, it goes into whatever finished column.
Okay.
That's an idea. I'm not trying to like say that that's how we should have to do it, but that would kind of organizationally make me like maybe make it a little bit more understandable how issues go from being reported to like organized and whatnot. But yeah, because another way we could do triage is we just go start like you said, we could go through the board and kind of discuss and write notes and stuff. We could also go from the top of the open issues thing and like organize the labels on each issue to say this issue we've looked at it, okay, we don't need to talk about it again. this issue we haven't looked at, we need to put a label on it or take a label off of it once we talk about it.
Yep.
So we know where we were, like what we.
Yeah. So I think currently we have by default new issues that are submitted will have our label needs life cycle needs triage and
Yeah.
kind bug on them. And so the intent of life cycle needs triage is exactly that and once we touch it and we triage it, then you take off the life cycle needs triage label. And that means, hey, we've looked at this, we've put it somewhere, we've done something about it. You don't need to do that again. That's intended to be the Boolean scene flag.
Yeah, because we kind of need a seen flag and seen and discussed flag, and also then once that happens, also priority. Like,
Yep.
Is it more or less important than something else that has been seen and discussed?
Yep.
I think those are the two things that you need from triage.
Okay.
Right.
And so
Maybe more.
we do have labels to cover priorities and stuff already as well. We don't use them very much at the moment, but we do have them. So we can use labels for that, but we could also use, we could also use position in the board once we have as you say, a cleaner board.
I mean, that's what the swim lanes are supposed to indicate,
so,
right?
yeah.
I was thinking we can get rid of the swim lane 1, 2, 3. That was like a legacy construct. I don't know who came up with it, but we can get rid of it. We can just have prioritized, unprioritized. Would that make it easier?
I think so. I think the parking lots were a Michael invention, and they were there to make it so that you can point people to this board and be like, what's in our roadmap or what's in the parking lots, right? Like the parking lots are like, roughly 1, 2, 3 releases out, roughly. That was Michael's idea, was that parking lots are kind of roughly like how far away things are.
Right.
We never turned that into a thing because we never got very we're never very disciplined about, new release, pick up everything in parking lot 1, like shuffle everything along, right? Like, I think if you're going to do something like that, you have to sort of be disciplined about, okay, we've cut a release, everything that was in parking lot 1 is now in to be done this release, and we cut things out or something. I don't know, but we never gardened it enough. And I think the reason the board is currently in the state it is that we haven't spent enough time gardening it and triaging it and looking after it. And you can't run this sort of thing without spending some time looking after it. I've been sort of trying to do some stuff, but one person is not enough. This needs to be a team-wide thing that everyone is agreed on and everyone does organically. Otherwise, it's a full-time job for a single person easily. So I think in terms of feedback about how we actually organize the board, like I think to some extent what you're saying makes sense, Sanjay, that it does make sense to have, like, as you say, the leftmost thing should be the current thing. It shouldn't be the backlog. You're 100% right. Like, that's silly having the leftmost thing be the backlog. The leftmost thing should be what is either actively being worked on. Like, it should be in progress, essentially. And we should be, you should be assigning yourself to an issue if you're working on it and putting it in progress. So that everyone knows that that's what you're working on. So there's a couple of historical things there. The needs investigation column is there to handle things because I noticed that we had people logging issues that were like, hey, I have this production problem. And, sometimes those production problems need a lot of back and forth and they take a long time to pull enough detail out of the person to be able to reproduce, or it's difficult to find out exactly what they need and we can't reproduce it ourselves and we need to go backwards and forwards. Like that, the needs investigation one is intended to be the column where you put things that we say, look, this one, we're investigating this one, like we're working on it, but we don't know what to do about it yet. But with the intent being that once you get it to a stage of we know what to do about this, then you put it into in progress or whatever, and it becomes a fix, right? Like, and so that's why
there does need to be still a concept of long-term, like,
yeah,
we always kind of need. So it's not as simple as this is being done, this is finished, because there are things that are going to sit in that column and pollute it for done column for a long time. So you do need a longer term column as well, or a longer term bucket,
that sort of thing. So I think I think investigating or something like that is a good sort of label for a longer term column that where we expect these issues to be open for a while. That's okay. You know, people are back and forthing on them. We're still discussing these. You know, maybe we're making a decision and we want to leave some time for it to stew. That sort of thing. Like, you know, in progress should be things that we're going to finish soon, and investigating should be something like that. Alex, does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, we can do it any number of ways. This is really your call. I don't really have a preference.
Okay.
For me, like going from left to right or right to left, both work. I just have to get used to it. I do agree with Sanjay that there are too many columns, and yeah, it's probably time for an overhaul. Just simplify things. And I'm looking at it right now, and I can't remember what prioritize is meant to represent, and why it's on the left, parking lot 3. I feel like prioritize.
Prioritize was intended to be these are the things you work on up next, essentially.
Right. So it's basically it's higher priority than parking lot 1, right? In theory.
That was what it was intended to be.
Yeah. So we should probably, at the very least, consolidate
So
parking lot 1 to 3.
here's what I'm going to suggest we do. I'm going to delete the unprioritized column, which will remove all of those issues from the board, because we're never going to get through 209 issues in the unprioritized column.
Yeah, but I use that column
Do you? Okay.
to move things into parking lot 1 to 3 essentially.
Okay, right. So
And I use that.
But it should be on the right then.
Because so for me, right, like without the board,
Yep.
I don't know how to maneuver it. I would have to go through like the 50 pages of issues going back.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like,
Okay,
Yeah,
sure. So if the unprioritized column is useful for you, Alex, then that's fine.
yeah, I
Like,
think I'm the only one using it. I've been using it to close out some of the older stuff on like,
Yep.
asks on ingress routes and things like that.
Okay, so I'm gonna pull it after. So here's my proposal. We're gonna do what Sanjay said. Leftmost side is like the closer things are to the left, the more urgent / in progress they are. Right, like the higher
good.
priority they are, or the more current they are. Right. So so prioritized backlog currently should be like about there. And then we should have a new column that's like in progress. And so at least that's then a clean column, Sanjay, that we can put things into. That is the place where we start. So I'm going to call it in progress.
But Nick, isn't in progress the current release? Like in this case, it would be 1.18.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So we take, so as of right now, because I haven't done the release yet. Come on, I hope you can do it.
Oh, the 117 release column is
Is
something.
currently the current release, and 118 release is the things that we are currently planning on doing in 118. So once, as part of cutting the release, I will move the automation from 117 to 118. I will move the 117 column over to the right as a reference for people to see. We'll leave that there for at least one release to say this is what we did do in a particular release, probably 2 releases actually, and then I'll move the 118 release to the leftmost column. Right, so the leftmost column is the whatever version release column. It has the automation for done, so that the closed issues and merged PRs get automatically put in there. So as long as you put them, so the way that works is as long as you put them on the board somewhere, if you put them in unprioritized and they get merged, then they get moved into 117. So as long as you click on if you assign them to the board and then and then you hit merge, they get moved into 117. So and I think maybe they might even, I think they have to be on the board before they count. But as long as you put them on the board somewhere, then if they get closed or merged, they get moved into this column. And so that will at least let us track, as long as we make sure that they're on the board somewhere, even if it's in unprioritized, then, I mean, they shouldn't be, they should be in here if you're working on them, but at least it picks them up automatically. So the idea then is once you start working on something for 118, you put it in, on the issue, you put it, assign it to the project board, put it in the 118 release column, you assign it to the 118 milestone, and that's to help the release manager do the burn down. And once you're done with those things, then it's actively being worked on, and there has to be a person you need to assign yourself to. I think there's I think we should have an open question as to whether we assign someone to a PR. I would say we probably should be assigning people to PRs, and the person who's assigned to the PR should be the shepherd. So if it's your change and you're the one pushing it through, then assign yourself to the PR. If someone else is pushing a change that's not a maintainer and you're shepherding it for them, then the shepherd should be the person assigned to the PR. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so we've got, summary, I guess. When this meeting happens, community members add links to issues and PRs they want to discuss. We talk about them, and depending on what it is, we add it to the board in the column, whatever appropriate column, whether it's the long-term discussion column or the current column. Also, we will also go over untriaged issues, discuss, add context and comments, and remove the untriaged label to make sure that we know that we've talked about it. We'll also potentially go over the long-term issues that have updates and need discussion. That should probably be less frequent. And then normal day-to-day processes for us is pick up an issue or a PR that you're working on, assign yourself, put it on the project board, just like with the drop down, put it on the project board, and probably also add it to the in progress column, whatever the thing is.
Yep. To the release column. Yep.
And so then we'll be able to see we should be able to see, well, how does the priority work with these columns? Because
so when you add things into the column, it adds it at the bottom.
And we have to be able to, we can manually move it around.
You can move them around. So the ordering of the columns has no meaning other than on the board. So it doesn't do anything to the issue like in the rest of GitHub. It's only stored on the board. So the ordering of the cards in a column is internal to the board. So you can change the ordering of that however you like. If you want to make sure that you bring that we have the stuff that's actually being worked on at the top, then just drag it up to the top. So you can see, if you're looking at the board right now, you can see in the investigating one, there's like 5 issues that I assigned myself to. Those were all ones that had been sitting there sort of unanswered for quite a while. So one time when I was on the first responder, I assigned myself to them and ping them all. And then I'll leave myself assigned to them so that I can go back to people and ping them every now and again. And but I think the other rule we need to have is that for investigating, things shouldn't be investigating without a person assigned. If there's no person assigned, then it shouldn't be investigating because no one's investigating it. For those ones, like the intent there is that hey, you ping some people. If they don't give you an update, then you ping them again and say, look, do you have any updates here? I'll give you a couple of weeks, then I'll close this. If you want us to reopen it, come back and tell us. And that just that's the manual version of what the bot on Kubernetes does, right? Like, hey, is this issue is stale? I'm going to mark it as stale and then mark it as rotten and close it, right? Like, but we'll just do it. We will do it manually because we're a small approach with much less issue turnaround, and it feels better as a community member to have someone actually say to you, is this still a problem?
Yeah, so investigation issues, assign someone, they're responsible for shepherding and giving updates.
Yep.
Blah, blah, blah. PRs and issues that need, so they should be in everything that we do should. And maybe we can also figure out some more GitHub automations around some of these things. So it doesn't have to be as manual, but
I think that's a good place to start. It's a bit more structure than we had before. It's enough structure that we can all understand what's going on. And I think we should start out lightweight and then turn the dial as we get better at it, and then rather than trying to get too clever about it to start with.
Cool. So current release list stating, and then there's these other columns. Cool. Yeah. And then yeah, so I guess, do we have anything to talk about today that we want to? 15 minutes left. Is there any new issues or things that are labeled on triage that we should talk about?
I think there was a couple I saw. So I'll just share. Hang on. So here's the board. But yeah, I was just going through the new issues, and I can see that there was a few. We obviously had some few in there, but I noticed that Dawn had opened this one. We need to update our code of conduct to use the CNCF one. So yeah, that feels like a.
Yep.
So this to me feels like a area, I guess, documentation. It's actually kind of more and website. It's not a kind of bug. It is doc impact. Yeah, so area documentation and doc impact are sort of, I'm currently expecting that those are ways that you joiners can find things for TechWriting working group to do.
Yep.
Area doc is, it's like
Bit
the
broad,
issue is an actual doc issue. And doc impact is like just appended to, any
Yep.
issue that you feel like there should be documentation around.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
So yeah, tech writers should be watching for both of these,
Yep.
especially
Okay.
the doc, area doc.
Yep. So this one is, so now I fixed the labels on this one. We will put it on the board. Now it goes into unprioritized by default, and thanks GitHub. Like, yeah, I'll have to refresh to get the actual thing that lets me drop down. No, okay. What? Okay, thanks GitHub. That's awesome. So yeah, that'll be at the bottom of the unprioritized column. No, at the top maybe. I don't even know anymore.
Just search for it. You'll
Yeah.
find it. Okay, so
That's a different one. So it hasn't actually. Thanks GitHub. Yes, it should be there.
yeah, it should be there.
Anyway, okay, now it's there. So it's in our unprioritized. I'm not sure. Like this should be like, I think for these, we put them on the board. Like this is the case where we do kind of need like it's on the board, but I don't know, which is unprioritized currently is. So, but I think we've done the important part here, which is labeling the issue correctly, so that.
Yeah, but, I mean, let's go through this exercise, right? Like
Yeah.
if you're the person who sees this issue,
Yep.
and you feel like it should be taken care of in the next release, it's not
Yep.
it's not a heavy issue, right? Where would you drop it? I would have dropped it in parking lot 1, like per my usual practice. I would have
Yep.
just put that in parking lot 1.
So
I think this is the disconnect though. It's like I drop it
Yeah.
there and then I expect someone to see it, but then I never raised it explicitly on the community meeting, or never, assigned it to someone, and it's just sitting there.
Yep. So I would say probably what we should do is like just so yeah. So I don't know, Sanjay, what do you think?
Yeah, this is kind of what I was saying, like where the like that something that we want to work on, and because we do really, I mean, we do currently release monthly, right? So we just kind of, and it's a release train model, so we just cut it off, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the month, we just say, done. The rest of the stuff after this is not going in. So if we were able to set up automation or manually do it to start with, where everything that we want to work on has some relative priority in just a straight linear list, and it's not really tied to a release. Like this would go into that in some order, right? Maybe this is also good first issue, size small, something. This would go, if we say this is something that we want to do in some point soon, but it's less important than something else. It goes in that linear list in some order. Someone does it, and when it gets done, it just goes into the like, this happened in release 118 column, right? With some automation. Like that's
So-
kind of what I was thinking of, that like just a list of stuff, and then it doesn't matter how long, well, it kind of matters how long that list gets, because the list should never get too long, because that means that we're not moving very fast, I guess.
So I guess that's what parking lot 1 was intended to be, right? Like, or that's what
Exactly.
prioritize-
That's what I was gonna say.
that's what
Like
Yeah, that's
prioritize
kind of what-
parking lot
picking
one.
the swim lane is
Yeah.
the like the creation of that linear list, right? It's instead of putting into a single list, we have parking lot 1, 2, 3, which I guess, yeah, I mean, it is not great. I have to say, I never thought it was really the best way
Yeah.
to do it, but it's just been around, and I
Yeah.
just try to put things in 1, 2, 3 as I see fit.
Yeah.
So maybe we consolidate 1, 2, 3 down to, just parking lot.
So yeah, I mean, I think that the things we call these things matter, right? Like, so the release columns are, as Sanjay said, they are that this is what's going in the next release. This is definitely going in the next release, or this is merged, and it's either we are committing to finish this for the next release, or it's already merged and will be in the next release. And then investigating is, we already talked about that. And then, so I think prioritize backlog, or up next or something like that is like, or parking lot or something like that is like, that's the pick from this list next is the next column that we want, right? Like this is the up next set of changes. These are the things that we should be doing next, and they should be roughly in scroll down order, right? Like most important things at the top. Yeah. So does that make sense to you?
And maybe then we can just bin the whole idea of extra parking lot columns or something. Just have that be this is, or whatever. I don't know.
So I get so the parking lots are intended to be rough approximations of priorities, right, Alex?
Yes, that's how I interpreted it. So parking lot 1 is more important than it's more near term, right? Not necessarily more important, but something we perceive to be something that we'll do near in the future.
Yep.
So, and the other thing I wanted to say was, anyone on the project, right, can go into this, can open up an issue and add tags and drop them into the list, and it's open for discussion for anyone else. Like if Sanjay drops it in here, I can ping Sanjay and ask him and tell him like, I don't think this should be prioritized or something like that, right? It's not like,
I think
it's not like only Nick and I are in charge of this board. This should reflect the most up-to-date consensus of the entire group.
yes.
So if anyone has
And
any questions about any issue, just move it to the other column and then talk about it and bring it up on the community meeting.
Yes, and I think that's the other thing, is that we need to move to, for the board, like, for lack of a better phrase, like forgiveness, not permission, right? Like move it to where you think is relevant, and then other people can question you about it if they think it's a problem, right? Like right, we should be erring on the side of doing things rather than erring on the side of waiting for someone to gatekeep whether or not you can do something. If you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's definitely, I'm definitely thinking of it because like previous teams that I've been on, I'm probably always the one that messes with the pivotal tracker thing the most of the engineers because I'm like, why is this here? But like, because like I would like to get to that state where we're able to just pull something in, and when we have a group meeting where we kind of look at the relative priority, like this meeting where we look at the relative priority, then we can talk and be like, oh wait, that doesn't actually really make sense. Let's move this differently, or like this is more urgent. Let's move it higher. So yeah, I mean, just having a place where we have some priority. I mean, we do have it. It's just that we don't use it. But like having a simple place that people want to go look and say, okay, I'm pulling this in. I'm pulling this up and down. Like this make it easy for people. I think that's that's what my Galaxy brand idea came from. Oh,
I think we can change the names and make it a little clearer for people. So I think, Alex, we should call them Up Next, Soon, Future.
Yeah,
You know, like,
I'll think about that.
Yeah, that's it. Like, let's not, Up Next just means exactly what it says, right? Soon means after Up Next, and Future means after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, and then if we want to assign, so I think it's good to have the specific release columns created before the date for things that we are committing to have in a certain release. So if we look at this one right now, we've got 118 release and 119 release. These are things that we are actually committing to trying to do in a specific release. And that's different to Up Next, Soon, and Future, because those are no firm time commitment, right? Like those are by design sort of very woolly time periods. But these columns are intended to be, we are actually committing to doing this.
Yep.
Does that make sense, Sanjay?
Yeah, I guess then shouldn't that just be the top of the Up Next column, and then everything beyond that is extra? Like,
yeah, I think it's, I like the idea of having something like Up Next is like the things you can pick up from next, but we're not making any commitment about when we will do it. But like,
so if you need like a bite size thing,
yeah, if you need a bite size, you
don't necessarily have time for the big chunky thing, or they're all taken or something. So you need a bite size thing that is important but not scheduled yet.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what Up Next, Soon, and Future are in my mind are intended for. Is like, and I mean, and it's 100% worth writing this down so that, and putting it into like the contributing documentation, so that there is one place where this is all written down, so that this is not tribal knowledge. This is like, we have written down that this is how we do things. And then if we change it how well we've written down. But that means that someone can start using the project, read the contributing document, and know about the board and know what all the columns are for without someone needing to explain it to them.
Okay.
I don't think it actually matters too much exactly what we do, as long as we write down what we do.
Yeah, I'll take an action item to write that, and then we can get feedback and I'll discuss it on a PR, because we have a contributing doc in the repo already, right?
Yeah.
So
there's actually, so I expect sort of the tech writing working group to, it's one of the things that I have been hoping, and I think they will notice, is that there's currently like a how we work document, a contributing document, site contribution document, a site page, on a contributing page on the website, and a how we work page on the website. They're all separate things. So like, there's definitely some consolidation needs to be done. I will leave it up to you, Sanjay, to pick where you put that for now until the consolidation gets done. But the important part is it's written down somewhere, like that, and that it can be picked up and consolidated by the tech writers, and it's not just something that exists on the recording of this meeting.
okay, so I'll write an issue for it, and it will go on the board, ironically, and it will be talking about how the board is used, and we will write it down, and then if you want to change it,
And I think if you want to change Like if you want to move it from one column to another, just, I was gonna, like I said earlier, bring it up on community meeting. Don't wait for community meeting. Just,
Yeah.
just add a comment in the issue itself and then move it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
And
explain
someone-
I've been-
why, and then-
that's what I've been trying to do. Yeah, it's like, I think this should be in up next because blah, 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 and move it into up next.
Yep.
Yeah, as long as you put a comment in there, then do whatever you like. Like, and then we can talk about, then we can move things around and talk about it, right? Like, and then the context is in the issue. I mean, yeah, that's where we want to be, right? Like, the context is in the issue. Cool. Okay, I think we are out of time. Thank you, Jonas, for moving this meeting to be an hour. Thank you, Micaiah, for coming along. I do still want to talk to you at some point about the future, but we had a bunch of other stuff to talk about today. Sorry.
No worries.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. See you.
Thanks, everyone. I'll talk to you later. Bye.